Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Luffy trains seriously to time travel and save Ace? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the patient one for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. All have a chance to regain something you've lost. The old man's gray hair flopped over his head, covering his eyes and the many wrinkles across his forehead. Every breath he took seemed to be an exertion, and he spoke in a hushed voice. Despite being right next to them, the 10 members of the most famous pirate crew in the world, the Straw Hat Pirates, had trouble hearing him. Then again, perhaps that was to be expected after just having survived an encounter with the monsters of Rusakana. The chance to regain something we've lost? Nami asked quietly. Still, her voice quivered as she wondered if he meant what she thought he did, images of Belmere coming to her mind. Yes. As gratitude for saving me, I will grant you use of my abilities, allowing you to travel back in time, the old man replied, quiet though his words were, they were clear. The devil fruit power? Robin asked him, a trace of skepticism in her tone, and her face showing her typical enigmatic smile. But beneath, she hoped immensely that the old man was telling the truth. If he were, it would mean she could save her island. She could meet her mother. I thought that traveling to the past was impossible, Zoro said, skepticism much more prominent in his tone. The old man chuckled, but the straw hat sweat dropped in unison as he began coughing partway through. It is, in a sense, he admitted as he recovered. Even if you save what you want to save, it won't affect you. But it will affect you. Most of those present sweat dropped again. What is that supposed to mean? Sanji asked. I think I understand. Even if we change the past, it won't affect us as we are now, but it will affect our past selves, Robin concluded. Our timeline will remain as it is, but doing this will create other timelines where our loved ones survived. Exactly, the old man said. I don't completely understand how it works myself, but whenever I change something from the past, the world where the change happens seems to break off from this world's fate. It's confusing, but it's useful. But, you can only save the people you want to save from one time period. Robin frowned. Is there a limit to how many people we can save in the time period we're sent to? If they're close enough together, you can save as many as you wish. But to send so many of you back at once, I won't be able to keep you in each period for long, no more than 1 hour in each. Oh. Can we reveal ourselves to our other selves? I want to see my reaction to me in the future. Luffy said. The man chuckled again, more briefly. That's your choice entirely, whether or not you reveal yourselves won't affect your future. Luffy grinned even as he munched on a ham bone that he took from his pocket. Also, you can't save anyone who died of sickness, the old man added. What? Chopper asked, tearing up a little. You can't save anyone actually, the old man trailed off, a hand on his chin and thought, forget I said that. You can save someone who died of a disease if you have the necessary medical skills to cure them. No need to worry, then, we've got the best doctor in the world on our crew, Usopp said, grinning at Chopper. Shut up. Complimenting me doesn't make me happy, you jerk. Chopper said, not fooling anyone with his big grin and happy dance. You sure are a strange group of pirates, the old man laughed. I haven't seen anyone like you in decades. So, then, who are you going to save? He asked, a strange glow coming from where his eyes were. Belmere. Nami practically shouted. I can't believe I get to see her again. My old crew member, Brooke, said happily. Though of course, I'd still come back to be with you all in my second life. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Tom. Frankie said, posing. I can't wait to tell him what I've done. You think he'll recognize you with how super you've become? Usopp asked jokingly. Guina. I can face her as the greatest swordsman in the world, Zoro said softly. Big bro T. I can prevent a lot if I manage to save him and set the rest of the crew on the right path, Jim said. I can save my island, Robin said, a dreamy smile on her face that the rest of the Straw Hats had seen only once before. When she completed the Rio poneglyph. If you all don't mind fighting off a buster call, that is. That's too easy, sweet Robin. Sanji cooed, before frowning in thought. But who should I save? Stopping that storm and shipwreck wouldn't do me any favors, and the old geezer doesn't need saving. I can save Doctor. I can't wait to tell him how much I've learned, Chopper squealed. And I can save Ace. Then the three of us can stand together again, Luffy said, a sad smile on his face as he thought of his brothers. There was a brief silence. I have the destination set for all of you, aside from the long-nosed man and the well-dressed blonde man, the old man said. Usopp sighed. This is too hard of a choice for me. With Chopper's skills, I could save my mother from dying when I was a kid. But I'd also love to be able to save Mary. The Straw Hats looked away in unison. Sanji was about to speak up, but the old man did first, his glowing eyes widened. Goodness me. This Mary you speak of, it is exceedingly rare for any crew to care so dearly for their ship that she develops a life of her own, let alone a pirate crew. He blinked slowly and nodded. So be it. If all of you share the desire, I will allow you to return to save her as well. Yes. Usopp cheered, along with Luffy, Chopper, and Nami. The others' reactions were more subdued, but those who had sailed on the Mary were making no attempts to hide their smiles. When the joy died down, all eyes turned to Sanji, who shrugged. Honestly, I was going to give up my turn for Mary. Everything I went through with the Vins mix and the old geezer led to me gaining the respect I have for food. I'd sooner die than risk letting myself lose that gift. What about something that happened on our journey? We could go back and prevent Enel from destroying Angel Island, Nami said. I don't mean to be selfish, but you could also try going back to Queen Atohem's assassination and stopping it from happening, Jin volunteered. Or we could help Tragai. Mingo killed his own brother, what would have happened if Corazon got away? Luffy asked quietly. Sanji frowned. Well, now I've gone from having nobody to save to having too many options to choose from. I will monitor you until you have made your choice. You have as long as the other journeys take, the old man said softly. Sanji considered this and then nodded. Alright then. Let's do it, old man. But, how is this going to work? Luffy asked. The old man raised a withered hand and a bright light surrounded all 10 of them. You will be transported to the first time period. When it's time for you to go, this light will appear again about 30 seconds before you move to the next period. When you've finished your travels, you'll come back here. I'll probably be gone by the time you get back, but there will be a surprise waiting for you. So, good luck. Everyone grinned as they considered what they would be able to do. Then the light winked out and neither the pirates nor the old man were anywhere to be seen. What the heck am I wearing? Wait, what the heck are we wearing? Usopp asked. All 10 of the Straw Hat Pirates were wearing black overcoats, covering their entire bodies from neck to foot, with matching boots and even gloves. Only their faces remained unconcealed, and there were hoods on the backs of the coats with thin veils that were clearly meant to remedy that when needed. Part of the time travel, I guess, maybe it's to keep us from showing ourselves to who we don't want to, Zoro said, already securing his hood over his face. Or maybe the stress on the human body is too much for time travel normally, so we have to wear these to prevent ourselves from crumbling into ash, Robin said, smiling sweetly. Damn it, Robin, why do you always have to say things like that? And what are we going to do if that's actually true? Some of the places we're going aren't exactly safe. Nami screeched. Speaking of which, where have we ended up first? Sanji asked. It was then that they took a good look at their surroundings. Above them was a dark and cloudy sky, and beneath them was a mass of ice, a cliff in one direction and a sharp slope in the other. Luffy stood at the edge of the cliff, his hood secure already as he stared down. The others approached him, and as they did, they noted the din of war coming from nearby. Looking over the cliff erased any doubts as to where they were as they saw a scene of horrible carnage. This is Usopp. It was clearly Luffy's turn first. They had arrived at the place where their captain had entered alone, that had haunted his nightmares and those of the rest of the crew for the bulk of their 2-year hiatus when they learned of the death of Luffy's brother, Ace. Even now, none of the crew ever spoke of the event or the place unless Luffy brought it up first. Marineford, Luffy finished softly. Absent-mindedly, a hand rose to touch his chest where a Akanu's scar was still on his flesh. Well, I guess we're saving Ace first. Guys? Luffy asked, turning back to them. His hood obscured his face, but when he spoke, the rest of the crew could practically hear his evil grin. Last time I was here, I gave it everything I had, and it wasn't enough. What do you think would happen if I went all out this time? Well, I'd think that the entire force of the Marines and Warlords put together would still be too much for you to handle alone, Zoro stated. But you're not alone this time. And against all 10 of us. I'd say it's a safe bet that this war is going to have different results this time, Sanji grinned. So, what's the plan, Captain? Nami asked. We save Ace and the old man and Akenu and Blackbeard die, Luffy replied coldly. And if old man Seagull doesn't call off this war, we sink the island. I like that plan, Frankie grinned menacingly. The blue whale-like ship came to a sudden halt in the middle of the battlefield, stopped by the strongest man in the world. Luffy nodded to himself. Guys, put on your hoods. If they even think that the Straw Hat Pirates were involved in this, it could mean a lot of trouble for our past selves. The crew's incredulity at how much their captain had thought this through lasted for less than a second when they remembered what was on the line. Luffy's insight was no surprise considering their current situation. Okay. Let's go. Luffy ordered and promptly vanished. Right. The rest of the crew said in unison, vanishing in the same way. This is my final captain's order. Whitebeard bellowed. All of Marineford turned their attention to the Emperor. Then much of his crew began speaking out. What? Final old man, don't say things like that. We don't want to hear that from you. We're going back to the new world together, aren't we? Hops. Ace cried out. This is where we part ways. All of you, stay alive at all costs and return to the new world in one piece. In horror, the pirates watched as he wound up a punch. The old man. You're planning on dying here. I'm a remnant of my era. There's no ship that's going to carry me to the new one. Now go. He said, lashing out with a tremor-infused punch, aiming at Marineford's main building. It became clear that Whitebeard was endeavoring to bring down the whole island, using himself as a sacrifice to do it. Many of the Whitebeard pirates cried out in protest, while many of the Marines aimed straight for him in an attempt to stop him and end his life. Reluctantly, much of the crew turned away and began to retreat. Ace, however, remained standing in stunned shock as he took in what had been said. The man who had taken him in as his son was going to die here, for him. He was oblivious to the war happening around him for several moments, even as Marines neared him, his eyes unable to move away from the Emperor. Ace. Let's get out of here, or the old man's resolve will be wasted. Luffy yelled, finally snapping Ace out of it. I know. I won't let it go to waste. Get lost, all of you. He added, blowing away the Marines with a burst of fire. But he wasn't going to leave without thanking that man. As the flames parted, he bowed before Whitebeard. No need to speak, Ace. Just answer me one thing. Was I a good father? He asked quietly. Of course. Ace cried fervently. The old man laughed, and with reluctance, Ace began to run away after his brother, who was alongside Jin. But carnage followed behind him as the Admiral with a magma fruit, a canoe, plowed through anyone in his way and approached them. Then he spoke. Running away the moment Ace was saved. The Whitebeard pirates are a bunch of cowards. The captain too, but it can't be helped. After all, Whitebeard is just a failure from the previous era. Ace skidded to a stop as those words sunk in, despite the cries of protest all around him, and turned back to face the Admiral. Take that back. He snarled. He was stopped from becoming Pirate King by your real father, Roger, and even now, he can't become a king. He's always been a failure, how can you think otherwise? The Admiral continued ruthlessly. Called a father by a bunch of scum, roaming the seas like a poor excuse for a family. Shut up. Roaming around for decades without doing anything, and in the end, he got stabbed by an idiot who he called a son, and is giving his life to protect a bunch of worthless pirates. Isn't that just the emptiest life ever? The furious words that Ace had to respond with, and the frantic warnings from all of the Whitebeard pirates, were cut short as an explosion of power burst from nearby. Even he and the Admiral froze up. And the result for the rest of Marineford was cataclysmic. Like a field of wheat before a gale, Marines as far as the eye could see fell on the ground, out cold. The army amassed to ensure that he met his death lost all substance in a matter of seconds. The only ones who remained conscious were the warlords, vice admirals, admirals, and fleet admiral. But looking around, Ace saw that although the rest of the commanders and Whitebeard had all stiffened, none of their allies had so much as knelt. That was Conqueror's hockey, it had to have been, Ace thought. But who? His question was answered a moment later as an enigmatic figure appeared between him and a canoe, a black cloak with matching gloves, boots, and hood obscuring its every feature. Seconds later, 9 more figures in identical garments joined him, varying in shapes and sizes. Everyone on the battlefield still consciously stared at the small group, certain that they were responsible. Then the first figure spoke, a male tone that Ace almost recognized, but it was stained with venom. The only thing empty here is your head, a canoe. What gives you the right to criticize someone like Whitebeard when you worship monsters like the world nobles? The canoe grimaced. They are descendants of the fathers of this world's justice, and I will. Stop talking crap. They're no more righteous than that reject, Doflamingo, a second figure spat quietly, tapping his foot against the ice beneath him and cracking it. The canoe's eyes widened, there were precious few who knew of the Dunquixid legacy. Who are you? He demanded. All you need to know is that we're allies of the Whitebeard pirates. More specifically, allies of Portgas D. Ace and his brother. Sorry, but you won't be killing either of them, said another figure that held 2 swords blackened with hockey, in a voice that both brothers almost recognized. The canoe's grimace grew, and he pulled back a fist of magma. If you dare to stand in my way, then you'll share their fate. One way or the other, Dragon's son and Roger's son will die today. He roared, the punch lunging forward. The figure that had blocked the first blow held out a single hand in an almost lazy movement. A canoe's punch struck the hand, and the Admiral started in renewed fury, unable to make the man so much as budge. The cloaked figure raised his other hand and threw it forward, and a canoe was barely able to block it before he went sliding backward. Old man. Take your sons and fall back. This is our war now. The figure shouted. On cue, the man leaped towards Akainu, the other 8 spread out to attack, and the last one, a rather large figure, grabbed both Ace and Luffy and began running back towards the Emperor, who was glowering at the figure. Ordering me to run away from battle. Cheeky brat, who the hell are you? He asked, directing his question to the large figure, who threw the 2 brothers up onto the whale ship before looking around. His eyes found a whale shark fishman, and he beckoned him over. Akainu was positively livid as he stared at the hooded stranger. He took pride in his strength as an admiral. Nobody fighting against the Marines in this war except for Whitebeard himself would be capable of doing more than slowing him down if he set his mind to a target. And that was what he was doing. The sons of Gold D. Roger and Monkey D. Dragon had too much potential against the world government. Their fathers had been bad enough. Their lineages had to end there, and then the government would be one step closer to annihilating the will of D that had been allowed to endure over the past few centuries. But all of that thought only served to make him more furious at the stranger, who had blocked and countered his attack with no effort. And now that the stranger had gained his full attention, he wasn't even bothering to block, just dodging out of the way of his blows. He moved with all of the speed he had, striking as hard and fast as he could, but the man evaded him. "What's wrong, Akainu?" The man asked in a tone that seemed to be playful mockery. But there was something else in his tone, and if the Admiral had to guess, he'd say it was hatred. "I thought you were stronger than this. How disappointing. You couldn't touch those 2 brothers, and now you can't even touch me. I guess you're just a failure." "Shut up." The Admiral roared, unleashing his magma in a massive stream towards the man. He dodged again, but the stream coiled around towards where he appeared, and another stream joined it. The process continued until a pool of magma surrounded the man, and with all of the energy Akainu could muster, he compressed the pool into 2 streams that coiled around the man, blocking him from sight as they grew into a double helix spire. Finally, the spire collapsed into a sphere before plunging downwards, Akainu cutting off the connection to his body as he forced the ball beneath the ice. The geyser of steam erupted from where it descended, and a red-hot stone solidified a moment later. The stone slowly sunk beneath the surface, though the geyser continued to spout. Akainu panted slightly, infuriated that he had been brought that far, especially as he felt the steam rush against him and solidify his body. But his rage cooled as he saw the proof of the man's demise. "Take that, you cocky brat. That's your punishment for standing against justice," he snarled. "That might have been impressive if you had managed to touch me," came a voice from behind him. Akainu spun around on his heels, and a punch from an obsidian hand grazed his face as he was unable to dodge fast enough. Blatant disbelief came across his face, even surpassing his rage for the moment. He had known from the start that the man somehow knew the shave technique, and it was a fair guess that he had observation hockey, too. But not even both of those together could grant the speed needed to escape the attack he performed. That needed something more, which could only mean. "You have devil fruit powers," Akainu snarled. Yep. There was no mistaking it. That was hatred in his tone. Then he raised a hand, and Akainu just barely made out that it was blackened with hockey, and that steam was flowing out of it as well as around it before it burst into flames. Then all he knew was pain. The man moved with ruthlessness, his flaming fists seeming to multiply as they pummeling every inch of him. His Loja defenses were useless, his own hockey failed to do more than muffle the pain, and every blow that he attempted to strike was crippled against the man's own strength. It was barely a minute when Akainu fell to his knees, every inch of him beaten, bleeding, or bruised. Through all his pride, he saw the facts. He was outmatched against this man, his powers were useless, and this man hated him. It was likely that he was going to lose to die. "Tell me, who are you?" Akainu said, venom dripping from his tone as he accepted the reality of the situation. The man raised a hand to his hood and then changed his mind and lowered the hand again. "I am Gold Roger's successor as the Pirate King." Akainu's eyes widened, and whatever resistance he had left found its way into his speech. "Impossible. The government would know if any pirate had made it to Raftel, and One Piece is just a myth. I'll admit you're powerful, but you're lying. You're just. I did make it to Raftel, I did find One Piece, and I am the Pirate King. I just haven't done it yet at this time. An old man with a mysterious power sent my crew back to the past to save something that we lost before." Akainu glowered at the man. Strange though his words were, they explained everything perfectly. Almost everything. "Even if I believe you, what did I do to make you hate me so much?" he snarled. "Two things, actually. One, you're a dog of the world government. One of those stupid celestial dragons almost killed my brother when he was just 10, and nobody cared. The fact that you don't care about life makes me sick. And two, you're why I lost what I did. You murdered my other brother right in front of me. He died in my arms because of you." The man screamed. Hearing those words, Akainu's eyes widened as everything clicked. But the last words that fell from his mouth were defiance. Well, that just means that he deserved it. He was a pirate, and he was weak, son of dragon. Ace isn't weak. The man that he now knew to be Straw Hat Luffy screamed. As the steam around them finally began to disperse, he pulled back his arm, and even as it hardened and ignited, it grew. Not much, but about as big as a normal person. The Pirate King punched forward, and Akainu grimaced ferociously as the fist penetrated his torso. It retracted a moment later, leaving a gaping hole in the middle of his body. That was for my brothers, Luffy spat, turning away and not giving another thought to the dying man as he made his way towards where his past self and brother waited. From the moment that the wave of haki had erupted from the stranger, knocking out everyone allied with the Marines beneath the level of a Vice Admiral in power, Sengoku had been paying very close attention. At the moment that the strangers scattered, he shouted out to the remainder of his allies. Ignore the Whitebeard pirates. Focus on the strangers. Kill them. He watched as Akainu fought against the man who was buying time for Whitebeard and his allies, and his eyes widened as he saw that the man was not only holding him off, but toying with him, not even fighting him. Looking around at the rest of his forces, the results weren't any more encouraging. Aokiji seemed to be even with the swordsmen with haki-infused swords. His arrow was barely fending off a man who was fighting with powerful kicks. The Vice Admirals could barely stand up against a tall thin swordsman whose cuts left ice on their bodies, an onslaught of massive plants from a man with a slingshot, and a short, squat figure that moved with vaguely familiar martial arts techniques. And as for the warlords, only Gecko Moria was fighting, and a rather bulky figure with enormous arms was winning that bout. Hancock, Kuma and Mihawk all stood before a lone feminine figure, not attacking as she spoke to them. Doflamingo, predictably, was simply relaxing and relishing the chaos of the situation. As Akainu's lava attack created a makeshift geyser, blocking him from view, the fleet admiral had had enough and moved into the fray himself, taking on his Buddha form as he surged towards the group that had so effortlessly defeated the Vice Admirals. The man with the slingshot aimed at him and Sengoku prepared a shockwave. His haki warned him of an attack from behind him at the same time that the shot fired. Too late, he realized that the projectile wasn't a plant and the attack from behind proved to be the same as the one in front, neutralizing his attack and form. See Prism Stone, he realized with anger and horror, handcuffs from the sniper coiling around his neck, while what felt like a rod of the oceanic mineral hit him from behind. He struggled to get up, to throw off the restraints, but a blade pressed to the back of his neck and a cold mist flowed off of it that nearly gave him frostbite. We have no grudge against you, Sengoku. I suggest that you stand down, he said quietly. The fleet admiral grimaced but sagged, the sea prism stone and blade practically cutting into his throat, robbing him of the potential to fight back. He quietly cursed himself for being defeated so easily. We have even less inclination to kill you than we do, Sengoku. Stand down. Sengoku carefully looked over and saw a livid Garp standing a few feet away, holding himself back from attacking with a visible effort. One of ours is convincing Whitebeard to leave Marineford with his life and with Marineford intact. I suggest that you command your forces to allow it, enough blood has been spilled already. If you still want to fight, we won't hesitate to destroy the island, came a female voice, the source clear with haki, but her body somehow invisible. Sengoku and Garp grimaces intensified. Who the hell are you people? They demanded. That's for us to know, said the invisible woman. Let's just say that we have an invested interest in the well-being of your grandchildren, Garp, and leave it at that. Garp's anger visibly faltered, and his posture relaxed the slightest amount. Where did you come from? That's for us to know, too, said the sniper. But you'll probably never see us again after we leave. Now, I'd suggest you hurry up and surrender, considering what our captain did to the one who tried to kill Ace. Garp's anger returned for a moment, and he looked in the direction of Akainu. Then any anger he had left in his mind vanished, and he and Sengoku both looked in shock as they saw the result of the battle between the cloaked captain and the admiral. Akainu's kneeling form penetrated right through the middle by an oversized fist, withdrawing to leave a bloody, burning mess. The admiral slumped back and fell on the ground. He would never move again. It's time to make your choice, Sengoku. Stand down, or fight. And we assure you, you won't do any better than Akainu did, the swordsman said, his voice as chilling as his blade. The fleet admiral grimaced, but before he could attempt to fight back, another bellow shook Marineford. My sons. We return to the new world together. Sengoku's eyes widened, Whitebeard was actually standing down and retreating. You have nothing more to gain from continuing to fight, Sengoku. Give the order please, said the smallest figure. The childish voice spoke to him in a way, and he sighed before raising his head and his voice. Marines. Stand down. The instant the words left his mouth, the sword at his neck withdrew. He stood on his feet and faced the battlefield. Gather the injured and get them the necessary treatment. This war is over. He then lowered his voice to a much less audible pitch as he bowed his head in shame. And we've lost. The wise choice regardless, Sengoku. The figures stepped back, the invisible woman materializing before she spoke again. I'm going to put this in a way you'll understand, Sengoku. Picture yourself and the Marines in Whitebeard's place and the rest of the world in your place fighting this war. That's what would have happened if they captured your son and advertised it, all because of the sins of the father. Remember that. Sengoku stiffened, but the stranger said no more before they turned away and vanished in a burst of shaving. The words rang through his mind, however, even as they departed. Edward Whitebeard Newgate, one of the 4 emperors of the New World, captain of the Whitebeard Pirates, former rival of Gold. Roger, user of the Tremor fruit and the current holder of the title strongest man in the world, was a man that nobody with half a brain would intentionally provoke, because the result, as shown with the ruins of Marineford, was nothing less than outright war. He was old, however, and he was prepared to make this place his final resting ground, taking down the headquarters of the Marines along with him. As long as his sons would be safe, he would be satisfied. But that mysterious man and his tiny crew had shown up out of nowhere, with a wave of hockey that almost made even his hair bristle. Almost, but he had only ever felt hockey of that magnitude from one other man. Feeling it again now, more than 20 years after the Pirate King's death, was enough to give Whitebeard pause. He observed the man, he and his crew talking down the most ruthless of the Admirals, up until the point where Akainu tried to attack. Tried being the key word, as the man blocked a fist of magma with one hand and knocked him back with the other. The stirrings of an old emotion rose in Whitebeard's mind. It took a minute before he realized that he was almost thunderstruck by this new development. Old man. Take your sons and fall back. This is our war now. And that was the end of his shock. His pride returned in full force as the man ordered him to leave and promised to cover him. Ordering me to run away from battle. Cheeky brat. Then he saw that one of the cloaked figures, a large and somewhat round fellow, was running towards him, Ace under one arm and his cheeky brother under the other. Who the hell are you? Whitebeard asked. The figure did not respond immediately, throwing the 2 brothers up onto the whale ship before looking around and beckoning Jin over. The whale shark fishman complied. What do you want? Jin demanded. The other figure raised both his gloved hands and lowered his hood. The thunderstruck feeling stirred again as Whitebeard saw the face of the same fishman that he was facing on the head of the cloaked figure, if a bit older and more weathered. Jin, on the other hand, gaped openly at the sight. That expression does not suit him, Whitebeard thought absently. I am Jin, helmsman of the Pirate King's crew. It was 3 years from now that we came across an old man who had a devil fruit with time-based abilities. He offered to send us back and let us save something that we lost. My captain chose here, if not for us, Akainu would have killed Ace, and Luffy would have barely made it out of this with his life. His voice became harder as he looked up at Whitebeard. Old man, I know you intended to die here. But for the sake of your family and those who rely on you for protection, live just a while longer. Die among the ones that you love and leave your legacy with those who can carry it on. You've done so much for all of us, and now that I have the chance to do this, I'm begging you, don't die today. The whale shark fishman bowed low, his forehead touching the ice, and after a moment, his past self joined him. Whitebeard stared at the 2 for a few moments, the decision already coming to his mind. The fishmen as a race would be left vulnerable immediately upon his death, to say nothing for the others. And his sons he was satisfied, but he could not say that he would be unhappy with being among his family a little while longer. This wasn't a retreat. The fight was over. I grant you your request, Jin, first son of the sea, he rumbled, turning to the whale ship and putting his strength into his legs. He leaped the full distance onto the bow and then bellowed. My sons. We return to the new world together. A collective cry of joy came among all of the Whitebeard pirates, many of those on board the ship already coming to embrace him. Whitebeard stared at the scene around him, taking in with some surprise the impaled and dying figure of Akainu, and the fights going on between the remaining 2 admirals and cloaked figures. Marines. Stand down. Sengoku's cry echoed throughout the area, and Whitebeard once again felt that long-forgotten shock surface as he saw the fleet admiral at the mercy of the other figures, and that Akiji and Kizaru were the only Marines still fighting. Seeing their superior thus subdued, however, they reluctantly complied and fell back. Sengoku was allowed to stand, and the 9 other cloaked figures retreated, making their way back towards where Whitebeard stood. Gather the injured and get them the necessary treatment. This war is over. He yelled. Nobody noticed that much of the events that had unfolded were caught by a transponder snail in the hands of a small-time pirate with a big-time past. Most of those present did notice, however, a rather large figure that suddenly appeared behind Marineford. Wait a second. Is that colossal battleship Sanguine Wolf? Ace asked incredulously. He was imprisoned in level 6 of Impel Down. How did he get here? Take a look over there for your answer, said the older Jin, his hood now replaced as he pointed to a nearby section of ice. There stood 10 figures, and Whitebeard felt his blood boil as he saw the one in the lead, grinning down at him before cackling. It's been a long time, old man. Ace stared with disbelieving eyes at the situation. This had turned from the worst day of his life into the downright weirdest day of his life. First, those strange people in cloaks appeared, decimating the entire Marine army, carrying him and his brother back to the ships, and fighting the man who had dared to insult his father. Now, here he was on the ship, staring down at the cloaked figure that had carried him as he beckoned Jinbe over. He saw that he was about to take off his hood before a thud behind him made him turn around. "Luffy?" he exclaimed, moving to kneel beside his brother, who had collapsed on the ground. "I'm fine, Ace. I'm just glad you're safe," Luffy said weakly. "Fine, you're completely exhausted. What did you do to yourself?" "I've used his tension hormone so I could keep fighting. I guess they've worn off now. I'll be fine after I get some meat," Luffy mumbled. In spite of himself, Ace chuckled. That was his little brother. Always thinking more about meat than anything other than his family and friends. "We'll probably feast on sea kings once this is over. But meanwhile, who the hell are those guys in the cloaks?" he asked, lifting Luffy up as he watched the battle. Both brothers' jaws slowly fell to hit the deck as they saw the results of the fights unfold, everything going in their favor. Akainu was dying, Aokiji and Kizaru were held off, Sengoku and Garp were subdued, Gecko Moria was defeated, the other warlords were not fighting, and everyone else among the Marines was down for the count. Then the deck shook as Whitebeard jumped onto the bow and bellowed. "My sons. We return to the new world together." Ace almost dropped Luffy to go and hug the old man, but he held back, settling for shouting with joy like the rest of the crew as they returned to the ships. As some of the cloaked figures also made it onto the deck, another yell pierced Marineford. "Marines. Stand down." At Sengoku's command, the two cloaked figures fighting the Admirals stopped attacking and took defensive positions. Seeing Sengoku as he was, the Admirals reluctantly retreated over to him. The cloaked figures holding him down fled towards them, and Sengoku yelled again as he stood. "Gather the injured and get them the necessary treatment. This war is over." Ace couldn't help but smile as he heard those words. Looking around, he was about to ask the cloaked figures just who they were, but as he spotted the colossal figure nearby, behind Marineford, he postponed those questions in favor of the more immediate. "Wait a second. Is that colossal battleship Sanguine Wolf? He was imprisoned in level 6 of Impel Down. How did he get here?" "Take a look over there for your answer," said the cloaked figure who had carried him, his tone grim. Ace's eyes followed to where his finger pointed, noting that all of the others in cloaks were looking that way, too. Then he felt his blood boil as his eyes locked onto the one man that he could never forgive. "Zahahaha. It's been a long time, old man." Marshal D. Blackbeard Teach stood at the scaffolding of Marineford, looking around the battlefield with a wide grin. Alongside him were 9 crewmates, among which he recognized Avalo Pizarro, Katarina Devon, Vasco Shot, and Shilyu of the Rain, other criminals that had been imprisoned in the lowest depths of Impel Down long ago. Teach snarled, already burning, but a strong hand from the figure that had grabbed him rested on his shoulder, while another 2 figures stood in front of him. Ace missed the exchange between Sengoku and Shilyu as he spoke quietly. "Don't be a fool, Ace. You lost last time, and he's only gotten stronger since then. But no matter what happens, Teach isn't walking out of here alive. Even if the old man doesn't win, Teach is the only person that my captain hates as much as Akainu, and you see what happened to him." Shaking off the fact that the voice seemed very familiar, not to mention the familiarity with which the figure spoke to him, Ace looked back at the corpse of the strongest admiral, a massive hole burned through his torso, and then at his captain. Whitebeard only stared at the man whom he had once called his son as he began to gloat. As pirates that were enemies of the government, it would be impossible to open the gates of justice and enter Impel Down. And of course, that's the only reason I needed the title of warlord. Now I don't need it anymore. "So, your only goal all along was to break into Impel Down?" Whitebeard snarled, pulling a hand back. Blackbeard had hardly any warning before the tremor-infused punch cracked the air and sent the shockwaves surging towards the Blackbeard pirates. The crew barely dodged, dropping down to the ground, but none were the worse for wear from the fall. As expected of anyone who could sail the new world, Ace thought sourly, trying to look past the figures that were blocking him from going after Teach himself. "You're the only scum I could never call my son, Teach. You broke the only ironclad rule of my ship by killing a crewmate. Nobody interferes. In the name of 4th Division Commander Thatch, I'll take your life personally." Whitebeard roared, leaping back down from the whale ship. "Zahahaha. Just what I was hoping for. Black hole." The pool of darkness that Ace recognized spiraled out, seeping the battleground in darkness. "Thatch died and so did Ace, didn't he, old man? I really did respect and admire you, from the bottom of my heart, but you've gotten old. Even when I brought Ace here alive, you couldn't stop a single comrade from being executed." That was the breaking point for Ace. A column of fire erupted from the ship and him with it, the cloaked figures not moving in time to stop him as he shot forward like a meteor towards the wretched man. "Deh," he screamed. Blackbeard looked up in horror as Ace scattered his flames all around him, no longer unaware of the bastard's powers and weaknesses. Pouring all of the energy he had into his powers, 100 flaming lances formed around him, hovering in midair as he landed just outside the darkness. "Sorry, Pops, but I'm not going to stand by and listen to this crap. St. Elmo's firestorm," Ace yelled, waving his hands forward and sending the onslaught of lances straight into Blackbeard. The now former warlord spat out blood as his concentration failed, the darkness dispersing around him as he was simultaneously burned and skewered all over his body. Ace collapsed from the sudden exertion, and one of the cloaked figures, the one who had killed Akainu, he realized, picked him up onto his shoulder. "Nice shot, Ace," he said softly. Again, Ace noted the familiarity both of the voice and in the tone. He knew these people, but who were they? "Old man. I don't know how much longer I can hold myself back in front of that bastard. If you're going to kill him, you had better do it fast, or else I'll handle it myself," the figure snarled as Blackbeard used his powers to siphon off the fire, though many injuries remained. "Don't order me around, your highness," Whitebeard rumbled, confusing Ace. As the figure who held him retreated several paces, the Emperor wound back an arm, preparing to strike. "And not so fast, old man. Black Vortex," Blackbeard yelled, extending an arm out. Whitebeard was drawn in, and his elbow touched Teach's arm. The now panting traitor grinned at his captive. "Zahahaha. How do you like that? You won't be causing earthquakes anymore." Ace was caught between the urge to smirk and facepalm at Blackbeard's sheer stupidity, as Whitebeard nonchalantly swung his with his other arm, cutting so severe a blow in the labia that it severed his left arm and most of his left side. "Aya. It hurts. It hurts, damn it." Blackbeard wailed, falling back on the ground and clutching his body. "You overestimate your ability, and you have weak defenses." "You're weak, Teach," Whitebeard said calmly, leaning down and grasping the man's face with a force that betrayed the anger beneath. Blackbeard looked in sheer horror at the monstrous man that he had tried to kill, even as he felt force cluster around his face. Stop. Old man, you wouldn't kill your own son, would you?" Then a scream pierced the air that made even Ace wince, squeezing his eyes shut. When he opened them again, Whitebeard was standing up, and the Blackbeard pirates, new recruits and all, were looking with pure shock at the figure on the ground, which was now short ahead as well as a left side. "See, Captain," the mime-like Lafitte stammered, falling to his knees, mouth agape. The champion wrestler Jesus Burgess was the first to break out of it, his fist clenching as he surged towards Whitebeard. "You monster. How dare you do this to our captain?" One of the cloaked figures appeared in front of Whitebeard, deflecting Burgess with a simple kick that sent him flying into Katarina and several meters back. The swordsman appeared next, and Ace was handed into the arms of another figure with enormous and very hard arms, as the captain moved forwards, cracking his knuckles. "Old man. Mind if we take the rest of the crew?" he asked, his voice as hard as steel. "Knock yourselves out, I'm satisfied," Whitebeard muttered, turning and moving back towards Ace. He gave a small smile. "Good work, son." Ace smiled weakly as the figure that held him moved with Whitebeard back towards the whale ship, ignoring the screams of agony behind them. When they reached the deck, they found the other 6 figures supporting Luffy, who was looking at Ace with literally with stars in his eyes. He never understood how Luffy did that. "That was awesome, Ace." Ace chuckled, but the figure holding him dropped him rather abruptly, and he crashed onto the deck in a heap. "But you shouldn't exhaust yourself like that in front of people who want to kill you," said the offending figure. "Oh, shut up," Ace snarled, glaring up at him. It was sound advice, and he sounded like he meant it, but the amusement in his tone, and the fact that a lot of people around him were stifling their laughter with varying levels of success made it clear that they were enjoying what had just happened a little too much. At that point, however, a series of explosions reached their ears, and they turned to see the 3 figures that had decimated Blackbeard's crew, now making short work of a small army of Bartholomew Kumas. "Those poor pacifistas," said a tall thin figure with a tone as dry as bones, while the sumo wrestler like Sentomaru leading the army simply gaped at the destruction. "Sentomaru, order them to stand down," Sengoku shouted. The 3 cloaked figures stopped for a few moments, clearly ready to attack more, but the numerous craters left by their assault already made Sentomaru sag. "All units stand down. They leave unharmed." The few who had been charging up lasers stopped and stilled. With that, the trio made their way back to the whale ship at blinding speeds, appearing next to Ace faster than he could say what the hell. "All right, let's set sail," said the captain. Finally, Ace recognized where he thought he had heard it from, and a sudden rush from the shock of that gave him enough energy to sit up and stare at him incredulously. "The outfit voice," Ace began, but the round figure that had first brought him to the ship spoke up. "Not now, Ace. Wait until we're out of the headquarters of the Marines before we talk. We're hiding our faces for a reason." Ace grimaced but conceded the point. Whitebeard slowly moved to a seat that had been prepared for him on the ship's deck as the fleet moved out of Marineford and all of the division commanders stood or sat by him, just glad that he had decided not to die. Boa Hancock followed behind them while Mihawk departed by a different route and Sengoku, Garp, Akiji and Kizaru all stared after them as they departed, none daring to interfere and satisfying themselves by rounding up the very unconscious Blackbeard pirates. As they sailed away, one of the figures moved up to Whitebeard, producing bandages and medicine and beginning to tend the Emperor's wounds. The old man made no motion to stop it, and the ease with which he felt his body recovering, even the bullet and sword wounds, stirred the long-forgotten surprise again. The figure wordlessly moved to each of the division commanders in turn as well as Luffy, and he was still in the midst of it when Marineford vanished over the horizon. At that moment, Whitebeard sat up, staring at the captain of the cloaked figures. "All right, we're far enough away from Marineford. Now, show me your face, Pirate King," Whitebeard said. All of the people on the deck looked with incredulity as the cloaked captain removed his hood at last. Revealed beneath was a young man with black hair, a small scar under one eye, and a wide grin. "Luffy," Ace demanded. "Straw Hat," Whitebeard said, gaping ever so slightly. "Me," Luffy cried out, his jaw hitting the deck and sagging on the ground. The older Luffy fell to the ground laughing. "Oh, that's too good. You should see your faces," he choked out. "Old man, that look really doesn't suit you," the rounder figure said with amusement, removing his hood to reveal a mirror of the Fishman warlord who had resigned out of loyalty to Whitebeard. All of the other people removed their hoods as well, revealing a group of faces that Ace recognized. Luffy's swordsman, Murano's Oro, though he had a scar over his left eye. The navigator, Nami, with waist-length hair. The sniper, Usopp, who seemed to have matured some. The cook, Sanji, who now had his right eye covered by hair. The doctor, Chopper, well, besides the hat, he didn't look that different. Then there were three others. He recognized Nico Robin from the wanted poster, but his wonder about her was subdued when he saw that the other two were a massive man with a metal nose and a buzz cut and a skeleton with an afro. "Jin?" Marco demanded. "And Ace's kid brother. What the hell?" "Why you guys," younger Luffy said in shock, tearing up a little. "I thought you all got separated at Sabati." "We did, Luffy," Nami said gently. "We still are. We're not the crew you know today. We're from about 3 years in the future, when we've already realized all of our dreams," Usopp continued. "The future? And how and why did you come here?" Ace demanded. The older Luffy looked at him, and Ace suddenly felt very uncomfortable. The darkened, haunted look was horribly out of place on Luffy's face. "An old man with a mysterious power lets us go back in time to save someone that we lost before. Ace, in my time, you fought a Akainu and lost, horribly. You barely managed to hold him off, but then he went after me when my strength ran out again. You took the blow and died in my arms," Luffy said quietly. An uncomfortable silence fell on the ship for a minute or so, and Ace heard the words of the promise he made to Luffy as a child echo through his mind. "I'll never die." He had failed that promise. And he saw the results of that failure as he looked at his brother's eyes. "I'm sorry, Luffy," Ace said, unable to say more. And it seemed to be more than the apparent Pirate King could handle as he moved over and hugged Ace with strength that nearly choked him. August Luffy was too tight, he managed. The captain loosened up a bit and Ace returned the hug after a moment. It seemed like hours passed before the two brothers finally released each other and Luffy stepped back. "So what happens now?" Ace asked. Luffy smiled sadly. "The mystery power only lasts for an hour, and from what the old man said, this won't change anything in our time. I'm just glad I could see you again one more time, big brother," he said. His expression then became less melancholy as he realized something. "But at least now the three of you can be together again." Luffy and Ace both blinked in confusion. "Three of us? What do you mean?" younger Luffy asked. "Sabo is alive," Nico Robin said with a smile. "Robin? I wanted to say it," older Luffy whined as Ace and younger Luffy stared in disbelief. "He's alive. When those world nobles fired on his ship, he was seriously injured, but he was picked up by a man that was visiting the island at the time. The revolutionary, Monkey D. Dragon. He's grown up to become the chief of staff of the Revolutionary Army," Robin continued, and older Luffy pouted ferociously. Ace would have found the sight amusing if the news wasn't so groundbreaking. "Then why the hell hasn't he shown himself to us?" he demanded. "He lost his memories from the attack and didn't get them back until he saw the newspaper with you dead," Luffy said quickly, looking defiantly at Robin, who merely giggled along with a couple of others on the crew. "Amnesia. I guess that makes sense after an accident like that. Still. Pops. Can you get in touch with Dragon?" "Probably, Ace," Whitebeard said, smiling slightly. "I hate to interrupt this, but we don't have a lot of time left and we have more that we need to say," Sanji said, looking up at the old man. "Things have seriously changed with what we've done. In our time, Blackbeard and his crew killed you and somehow stole your tremor fruit. He usurped you as an emperor and had his reign of terror over all of the islands that you used to protect. Make sure that you have something prepared for those islands for when you're gone. Fishman Island had to turn to Big Mom for protection, and if it wasn't for certain events, she probably would have destroyed the whole island, Jin continued. Certain events? Jin asked. Sorry, I can't say more without going against my captain's orders. He doesn't want to go on any adventures where he knows what's going to happen. Knowing that I joined the crew is probably too much already. Jin sighed but nodded. Any other world-changing news you'd like us to know? Whitebeard asked dryly. One more thing, yeah, older Luffy said, looking at his younger self with an expression of dead seriousness. He fumbled with the coat he wore and pulled it apart to show his chest. Many on board gasped or stiffened as they saw the jagged X-shaped scar there. You're not strong enough to take on the new world yet, Luffy, and Kuma knew it. He works for Dad. Everyone on the crew was sent flying somewhere that they could train themselves to get stronger, as fast as they could. But it took Ace dying in my arms for me to realize just how not ready I was. You need to wait and train, or you won't last 5 minutes in the new world. The younger Luffy's expression was unreadable. It was a full minute before he responded. What do I need to do? Send out a message to everyone to wait 2 years before they head back to Sabati and ask Rayleigh to train you in hockey. The journey still won't be easy, but it'll be possible once you've learned all of it. Oh, yeah, and when you get to the new world, make sure you help Trafalgar. That guy with the weird room power? Younger Luffy asked. In my time, he helped me get me away from Marineford. Don't let anyone else find this out, but he's a D, too. Luffy tilted his head. What does that have to do with anything? Zoro chuckled. You'll just have to wait to find out, Captain. Younger Luffy nodded but frowned. How'd you lose your eye? Zoro chuckled again. Like your older self said, Kuma sent all of us to places where we could grow a lot stronger in a hurry. I got blown away to Mihik's home island. What? Mihik trained you himself? Asked several of the people on the crew. Awesome. Luffy exclaimed. Yeah, but it wasn't so awesome for some of the rest of us, Sanji groused. Blinking in realization, he looked around. Ivankov is somewhere around here, right? He should be on one of the other boats. Why? Jin asked. Tell him or her or whatever that I don't look like that stupid wanted poster, alright. The cook requested. You trained with Ivankov. The chef grimaced and huffed. If nothing else, I'll admit that their attack cuisine recipes were worth it. A few of those on the deck gained looks of understanding. Then Whitebeard spoke up again. Straw Hat Pirate King. How much of that hour do you have left? Future Luffy frowned and looked at his crew. I think we've got roughly 20 more minutes, Nami stated. That'll do. My sons. He shouted abruptly, gaining everyone's attention. Then he smiled. This is cause for celebration. Break out the good stuff and let's have a party. On it, Pops. The pirates cheered. The Moby Dick had been destroyed, but with that being the only blight on the Whitebeard pirates' victory, the celebration was as raucous as one could expect. The Straw Hats musician, shipwright, doctor, and sniper all attracted such attention amidst the Whitebeards that even the other commanders were cheering them on. The swordsman was grinning madly as he found that many of the commanders were actually capable of keeping up with drinking with him, and the navigator was right beside him. The two lines seemed somewhat subdued as they spoke, but even they were unable to resist partaking of the crew's activities. The chef was making a spectacle of preparing dish after dish of delicious food, which the captain, his past self, and Ace were taking particular pleasure in scarfing down. Attempting with varying degrees of success to steal off of each other's plates and calling it a hockey competition. The younger Luffy was looking more and more steamed as he proved unable to steal, and the grins that his brother and his older self were shooting at him served to erase whatever reservations he had left in his mind about training until he could do that. All in all, both crews were enjoying themselves to the greatest degree possible, and Whitebeard was making no attempt to hold himself back with Chopper's medicine working for his favor. At length, however, he did turn his eyes towards the captain. Pirate King, he rumbled. I want you to answer one question that I still have. Sure, what is it, Pops? The older Luffy set around a piece of meat on a bone as big as he was. Would you begrudge me for continuing to follow the dream I have? The atmosphere stilled, and the older Luffy looked at the old man curiously. Said old man turned his gaze to the fireman before him. My intention was to see Ace standing as the next Pirate King. The proof stands before me now that you would be the one to claim the throne instead, but would you begrudge me if I still wanted Ace to reach the top? Pops. Ace gaped. I was trying to make you the... I've never been interested in the throne, Ace Whitebeard said with a smile. From the early days of my career, I've only wanted one thing. He looked around at all of his commanders. All I wanted was a family. And it's thanks to you, Pirate King, that they're still here before me. Which is why I ask, would you begrudge me for wanting to see one of my sons rise to be all that he could be? The even younger Luffy didn't speak as his older self remained silent, his expression shadowed. Then, after a few moments, he raised his head revealing a large grin. Shishishi. Of course not, old man. Just as long as you won't mind me kicking Ace's ass to take it myself. Hey. Ace snapped indignantly, slugging Luffy in the skull. The Pirate King crashed to the ground and all facing him looked in surprise. Then Ace's surprise turned to smugness. Please, Luffy, if you can't even dodge a punch from me as the Pirate King, what chance do you have of kicking my ass in a fight like that? The melancholy tone in Luffy's chuckle made the smile fall from Ace's face. The Pirate King stood to face him. I could have dodged that if I wanted to. But I didn't. I sort of miss you hitting me like that. Before Ace could feel any shame, however, the Pirate King threw a punch of his own, sending the fireman flying against the railing of the ship and sending the older Luffy into gales of laughter. But I always wanted to do that. Shishishishishi. Why, you, Ace growled, getting to his feet. See, Ace. I can beat you if I want to. Younger Luffy said cheerily. We'll have a fight when we get to the end and we'll see which one of us becomes the king. Ace processed that for a few minutes before grinning, striding back over and clasping hands with his brother. It's a deal, Luffy. Bararara, Whitebeard chuckled. I'll be satisfied with that, the brother of my son is my son as well. All who heard him smiled warmly. Then they shielded their eyes as, without warning, the 10 pirates from the future began to shine. HMPH, looks like our time's up. Ace, take care of your brother, we won't be able to come back and save you if you screw up again, said the metal-nosed man. Ace nodded, determination clear in his eyes. I won't break my promise this time, Luffy, he swore to the Pirate King his brother grew up to become, who smiled in response. Then the older Luffy turned to Whitebeard. Old man. Live as long as you can. Take it from someone who knows. It's better not to leave your family behind before you have to. Ace stiffened at the hurt in his tone and reaffirmed it in his mind. From now on, no matter what happened, he'd never let someone goad him into a fight that he wasn't sure he would win if it meant risking breaking his promise to Luffy. Whitebeard, on the other hand, only nodded. I don't have a lot of time left anyway, Pirate King, but I'll use every second of it, he rumbled. Luffy grinned, then turned to get one last look at his brother, who gave him a warm smile filled with resolve. And in the next moment, the light winked out and they were gone. When the light faded this time, the sounds of the ocean swell that they had heard on Whitebeard's ship grew the slightest bit quieter, but did not vanish. The ground beneath them was hard earth and the land behind them sloped up abruptly. Before anyone could speak, a very loud foghorn-like noise made them cover their ears. AHH. What the hell, wait, I know that noise, Luffy said, spinning around. The proof of his statement was shown immediately. They found themselves on a landmass close to a cliff that sloped down sharply to the ocean. A few meters away from where they stood was an enormous black mass. Looking further up revealed an eye on its side and a massive mouth on its top, it was a whale. Baboon. Bro cried joyfully, but then puzzlement came over his face, though I don't have a face. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Skull joke. Wait a minute, what are we doing here? Did any of you lose someone at the Twin Capes? I don't think so, Nami said, pondering. It's definitely not me, Zoro, Usopp, Chopper, Robin, or Frankius at your crew. It can't be, Laboon was about the size of a rowboat when we entered the Grand Line, Brook replied. And Big Bro T was attacked on Fullshout Island, nowhere near the Twin Capes, Jim said. It can't be me, I still haven't made up my mind, Sanji said. So the only one that leaves is Mary. Of course. Usopp said, grinning. Back at the start of the Grand Line was when she really started taking damage. Her head broke off when she hit Laboon, and Luffy tore off the mast. If we stop that from happening and make sure our past selves take better care of her, she should make it to Water 7 in good enough shape. Alright. And when that happens, I can super repair the ship. No, I've got it. I'll upgrade her with Atom Wood and turn her into the Thousand Mary. Frankie said, posing. The Thousand Mary, huh? I like the sound of that. Let's do it, Zoro said, smirking. Well, we'd better get started fast. Here we come. Sanji said, pointing to the current running down the mountain. Don't worry, I'll handle it, Robin said, crossing her arms. Oh, and Sanji. So long as we're here, could you do me a favor? I'd love to, sweet Robin. Sanji cried, going into love mode. The 5 members of the recently infamous Straw Hat Pirates had been in a state of joy as they descended Reverse Mountain into the Grand Line. This came to an abrupt end as the ocean spray cleared up as they neared the bottom of the mountain and saw a massive black wall in their way that they quickly identified as a whale. WW, what are we gonna do? Usopp asked, panicking. Should we fight? Luffy asked. Idiot, how are we supposed to fight a 100-ton whale? Nami snapped. BD, do something. Our path is blocked, how do we escape? Yusuf continued. Calm down. Sanji said, suppressing his own anxiety. If this creature looks like a giant wall to us, we must be a speck. That's right. It's highly possible that this thing isn't even aware that we're here, Nami realized. We'll still run right into it if we don't change course. Zoro pointed out and then pointed to the left. Look, we can get by on the left. Port. Hard to port. The rudder's broken. Yusuf shrieked. Do something. Anything. Zoro shouted, running along with Sanji towards the helm room. But a sudden lurch forward of the ship made him fall over, along with everyone else. Luffy barely clung to the figurehead with his rubber arms as his body flew several feet forward before snapping back and sending him flying into the mast. He got back on his feet quickly and sprinted to the front of the ship. You guys have got to see this. Luffy shouted, his jaw dropped to the deck. Nami was the first to look over the edge along with Luffy, and her own jaw hit the railing even as the ship slowed down. Everyone, hurry and get up here. She yelled. Sanji came fastest and Zoro and Usopp slowly followed. A collective silence fell as the Straw Hat simply gaped at the sight of what had prevented them from crashing into the whale. The spontaneous appearance of two positively enormous arms from the front of the ship that were pushing against the water to slow them down. Since when can ships grow arms like this? Sanji asked weakly. When the boat came to a stop, one of the arms raised its hand and pointed to their left. They turned and saw a group of figures in black on one of the capes. We'd like to have a word with you, came a cool female voice in the direction of the arms. The Straw Hats turned just in time to see the arms suddenly vanish in a flurry of flower petals and exchanged looks. Luffy was the first one to recover. Alright, everyone. Row towards those guys and let's find out what they want. And how the heck they could do that arm trick and somehow speak to us, Usopp responded weakly. Slowly, the crew gathered the oars and began rowing towards the cape. The whale would have been all but forgotten were it not for its bellowing. When they finally reached land, another surprise awaited them as a massive net of normal-sized arms formed from the top of the cliff, extending down to their ship. Luffy wasted no time in climbing up the net and the rest of the crew followed at varying paces, not entirely comfortable with the situation. Reaching the top, they found 9 cloaked figures of varying shapes and sizes, all of their faces covered by black hoods. Before you ask, what just happened was due to my flower fruit powers. My body parts bloom like flowers wherever I'd like them to, said one of the figures in the same voice they'd heard back on the ship. I guess that makes sense, but how did you make them giant? Nami asked. 1,000 smaller arms to make 2 bigger ones, she replied. Nami shrugged and Zoro stepped forwards. Thanks for explaining and saving us, but why exactly did you do that? Do you help every crew that comes down the mountain from running into that whale? No, we had a special interest in protecting your ship, she replied. A pair of screaming voices coming closer from nearby delayed any more questions. The Straw Hats turned and their jaws collectively hit the ground once again as they saw another of the cloaked figures flying towards them, with an oddly dressed orange-haired man in one arm and a blue-haired young woman in the other. They continued screaming until they were set down a short distance away. The figure that had carried them walked back over. Done as you requested, Sweet Robin and Crocus should be out shortly, the figure said in a familiar voice. Thank you, Sanji, Robin said, walking over to the figures. The last word she spoke made all of the Straw Hats look with astonishment at the figure. Sanji, Luffy asked incredulously. The figure chuckled before removing his hood. He had a small goatee and his hair covered his right eye instead of his left, but there was no mistaking him. Hello, Captain, he said casually. What the hell? Sanji asked, looking at himself as if a bit older. Just a minute, we'll explain everything. But first, the older Sanji said, gesturing to the other figures. 4 of them also removed their hoods, and once again, the Straw Hat's jaws hit the ground. If this keeps up, my jaw might become as flexible as Luffy's, Nami thought absently, staring at what was clearly her older self. She also absently thought that she might have to try growing her hair out like that, it looked good on her. What the hell is going on here? Zoro asked, taking in the sight of a green-haired man with one eye and a smirk that gave the impression that he wasn't someone to mess with. Wow, was I really that scrawny before? Asked the older Usopp, who had a look of confidence about him and seemed to be much more muscular. Whoa. Are they? Luffy asked, staring at the man in front of him. There was hardly any difference at all, except that the Straw Hat was missing. Straw Hat Pirates, meet the Straw Hat Pirates, older Sanji said, smirking. Several seconds passed before anyone could speak. Wait a minute. If you're me, where's your hat? Luffy asked. His older self chuckled. But Shanks, of course. I gave it back to him when I kept the promise that I made to him. All of the Straw Hats looked at him incredulously, but none more than Luffy. Were you guys from about 3 or 4 years in the future when we've already fulfilled all of our ambitions and the Straw Hat Pirates have become the crew of the Pirate King, older Usopp said. Awesome. Luffy said, literally glowing with excitement. Many of the watchers sweat dropped. I never understood how Luffy could do that, said a tall thin figure that had not removed his hood. Okay, so you are us from the future. Then who are the rest of these guys? Nami asked weakly. Our crew, of course, older Nami spoke up. You don't think it was just the 5 of us all the way to the end of the Grand Line? But we're well aware of our captain's stance on knowing too much about the adventures that he's going on, older Zoro said, looking at younger Luffy with a smirk. The younger crew all looked at him, and he nodded. Yeah. I don't want to go on any boring adventures, I'd sooner quit being a pirate altogether. But still, why are you guys here? He asked curiously. An old man we met used his devil fruit powers to send us back in time to save something that we lost on our first adventure. Each of us got to choose one time period where we lost someone, but there was one that we all agreed that we wanted to save, older Zoro said, walking over to the cliff's edge. The past and future crews followed after him and followed his gaze down to their ship. You came back here to save Mary? Nami asked in confusion. Mary was our friend, older Usopp said softly. On our journey across the Grand Line, she got so damaged and we didn't have a shipwright to make all of the repairs that we needed. All we had were my mediocre skills and I did everything that I could to take care of her. It was when we reached SK he trailed off, counting on his fingers. The 6th island on our journey that she started to take on a life of her own. She had been damaged again, but she had enjoyed spending time with us so much that she took on a form of her own and repaired the ship. I remember seeing her, like a ghost carrying a hammer, and saying, "It's okay. I'll carry you all a little further." When we reached the 8th island on our journey, Water 7, home of the best shipwrights in the world, we decided that we needed a professional to take care of the ship. But it was too late. The keel had been cracked, and not even they could fix it. It was hard for all of us, especially me, but we had to get a new ship. But that wasn't the end of it, something happened on that island that forced us to infiltrate a government base. In the end, we were surrounded by marine ships, about to be blown away, but Mary came to save us, sailing all the way to where we were on her own and helping us get away. We were just starting to enjoy the trip back when she broke in half. Usopp's voice trembled as he continued. A ship with a bunch of the shipwrights from Water 7 was there to pick us up, but there was nothing we could do anymore for Mary. We gave her a Viking funeral. I still remember it like it was yesterday. We watched as she burned, seeing her off as snow fell from the sky. And then she spoke to us. "I'm sorry," she said. "I wanted to carry you all a little further. I had so much fun. I wished our adventures would never end." She just apologized, like it was her fault. Luffy knew that it was ours and said as much. We wrecked her and I ended up repairing her. It was our fault, but she said that she didn't mind. She was happy. Her last words were, "I know you always treated me with love. Thank you." And that was as far as the sniper got before he collapsed on his knees, crying. The future Zoro and Sanji had their faces shadowed, Nami was on her knees as well, Luffy was ducking his head in a vain attempt to hide his own crying, and half of the figures behind them were bawling as well. The past crew looked with astonishment and sadness. The story was ridiculous, but not any more than the fact that they were looking at their future selves, who were part of the Pirate King's crew. They actually felt tears running down their own faces as they heard the story. Past Zoro was the first one to speak up. "So, what can we do to keep that from happening, besides making sure Usopp gets some better skills until we get our ship right? Let's see, besides that and just making sure you treat her well, the only threat I can think of is after the 4th island you visit, when you have to deal with a marine fleet that fires iron spears instead of cannonballs. Oh, and try to have protection against fire on board," future Sanji said. "And when you reach Water 7, look for a man named Frankie, anyone in town should know who he is. Tell him that you'll provide the money for him to buy Adam wood if he promises to use it to upgrade your ship." "Nami?" future Zoro asked, looking at the past navigator. "The Adam wood will cost 200 million berries." Nami stiffened, but in light of the story she just heard, she kept her anger in check. "What's so special about Adam wood?" she asked. "It's the most sturdy wood in the world," future Usopp said, getting himself together. "Even cannonballs just bounce off of it." To put it in perspective, Adam wood was used to make the Oro Jackson Gold Roger's ship, the only ship that ever made it through the entire Grand Line, besides our Thousand Sunny, that is. And Frankie was an apprentice to the man who built the Oro Jackson. You could not ask for a better man for the job. Nami let out a small sigh, but there was determination in her eyes as she nodded. "So he's one of those guys, Frankie, then?" past Luffy asked, pointing to the other figures. The biggest and most oddly shaped of them stepped forward and removed his hood, showing a man with a metal nose and a buzz cut. "That's me. But I look a lot less super when you find me at Water 7. Also, if you have trouble persuading me, tell me that there's someone who forgave me a long time ago that would be proud to see me build the ship of my dreams with gusto. That last part is important. Make sure you say with gusto." Usopp wrote down the odd instructions before walking up to him. So, how long are you guys going to be here? Not long, about 45 more minutes, but that should be long enough for me to give you a crash course in keeping your ship in shape. As their conversation continued, Nami spoke up. So, why did you come to this particular time? Did we crash into that whale the first time? Yeah. Our idiot captain fired the front cannon at the whale to slow us down. It worked, but the figurehead broke off. And that's Luffy's special seat, so he decided to punch Laboon in the eye. He what? All of the past crew looked dangerously at their captain, who raised his hands. Hey, I didn't do anything. Then he swallowed the ship, Sanji continued casually. Bonk. Luffy extracted his head from the ground with some difficulty. And then when we got out thanks to the old man who watches over the Twin Capes and Laboon, Luffy tore off the mast and rammed it into Laboon's head. Bonk. Luffy extracted his head from the ground with more difficulty. Why the hell would you do that? Why the hell would he do that? Nami demanded, looking back at future Sanji. Because he heard Laboon's story. And I think that it would be better if you heard that story from him, future Sanji said, replacing his hood as the other future Straw Hats did the same, as an old man with flower petals around his head approached them from nearby, having climbed up the cliff while they were talking. While the past and future pirates had been talking, Robin had other things on her agenda. Namely, doing what she could to make things easier for herself and her crew in the near future. To that end, she'd asked Sanji to fetch the two Baroque Works agents that she knew were in Laboon, and Brook had suggested he ask Crocus to come out as well. Now she stood face to face with the two Baroque Works agents, who had stopped their indignant demands as soon as she removed her hood. Miss All Sunday, what are you doing here? Mr. Nine demanded, Miss Wednesday beside him only staring in shock and apprehension. Nothing you need to concern yourself with, Mr. Nine. I'm here to talk to Miss Wednesday, so if you'll wait over there, Robin said, pointing to the far side of the land where the mountain sloped up. Mr. Nine slowly complied, not daring to disobey her. As soon as he was out of earshot, Robin sighed. Princess Vivi of the Alabasta Kingdom. I don't know how much of what I'm going to say you'll believe, but I'm only here to talk, not to fight. Vivi grimaced as she looked at her, but said nothing. My name is Nika Robin, and I am not the Miss All Sunday that you know. The figures you see there are members of the pirate crew that I joined, indirectly as a result of the events in Alabasta. With the help of a man with a time-based devil fruit, my crew returned to this time to give some assistance to their past selves. I'm taking the chance I have now to do what I can to make up for my past mistakes. Robin bowed her head to Vivi. I am sorry for what I have done to you and your country. It was a minute before Vivi spoke. What are you going to do to prove it? Robin looked up. My crew and I cannot stay in this time for long. What I can do is give you advice to help you. Ally with my crew, they will help you return safely home to Alabasta and defeat Baroque Works. And when you see my past self, tell her this. The Straw Hat Pirates are those that Saul spoke of and will help you find the Rio Poneglyph. Vivi could only stare with a distinct lack of comprehension, but shrugged. I guess we'll see if you're being honest. Why did you ally with Crocodile in the first place? Protection. The world government sees me as a threat because I'm the only one left in the world who can read the poneglyphs. It's not even the threat of reviving the ancient weapons that they're most afraid of. 900 years ago, a century began of which no history is known, but it ended with the birth of the world government. There is nothing that they're more afraid of than that history becoming known. For the 20 years before I found that crew, I was forced to remain on the run, relying on various groups for protection and using them as shields when they outlived their usefulness. Crocodile was just the most recent of them. And what's different about this crew? They're pirates only in name. For the sake of just one of their friends, they declared war on 3 warlords, 3 emperors, and the entire world government, and won. They're far from the level of power that they will be at, but the captain is strong enough to defeat Crocodile as he is now. Vivi reflected upon all of this quietly. It was a few minutes before she raised her head. Thank you for telling me all of this, Nika Robin. Robin nodded, a small smile on her face as she turned away. Oh, and one more thing. I promise you that Igaram will survive until the end of the war. Vivi was puzzled at that last note, but shrugged it off as Robin beckoned Mr. Nine back over, slipping back into the guise of Miss Wednesday for now, but looking at the retreating figure that was replacing her hood with hope burning more brightly than she had thought possible before. So, he's been waiting for 50 years for his crew to come back to him, but they just ditched him and ran away. That's horrible. Usopp said disgustedly, as Crocus finished his tale. It would be horrible if it were true, said the cloak Luffy, drawing everyone's attention. Just a second, he said, walking over to the cliff and removing his hood again for a moment. Laboon! He yelled. The whale looked over at him, and the past crew along with Crocus looked in astonishment as the massive whale seemed to cower a bit. Luffy beckoned, and sweating, the whale approached the shore. Luffy replaced his hood and patted the whale's front before walking back over to the group. Conqueror's hockey. Impressive, Crocus said. Conqueror's what now? What the hell did he just do? Sanji asked. Later, future Luffy said. Like I was saying, that's not what happened to Laboon's crew. I guess that rumor got started when half of the crew was infected with an incurable disease and had to be shipped off to prevent what was left of them from being infected. Then the rest of them met a group of pirates with insane strength and every last one of them was killed. The past crew and Crocus all looked at him with confusion. His tone was strangely upbeat for saying such a morbid revelation. You're saying that awfully lightly, young one. And how would you know that to be true anyway? Crocus asked. That's quite simple, really, said the tall thin figure, stepping forward. You see, all of them died in that attack, but one of them, as it happens, ate the revive fruit. The figure slowly removed his hood and the past crew freaked out as they saw a skeleton with an afro beneath. Crocus stared in shock. Brook? He asked. Yes, Crocus, it's me. It's just unfortunate that we died in an area with so much fog. It took a year for me to find my way back to my body, and you see the result. It's quite a good thing that the fruit's power is so thorough that it can sustain me even in this form. The past Straw Hat slowly recovered and watched as Brook produced a violin seemingly from nowhere and walked over to Laboon, who looked at him with no fear, but confusion. Laboon. I'm sorry that I took so long. It's me, Brook. With that, he began playing his favorite tune on the violin, moving with a dance that made Laboon's memory stir. Despite the lack of skin, there was no mistaking it. Tears surged down his face as he attempted to nuzzle the skeleton, cutting off his song. It was an awkward embrace, but they managed to make it work. The past Straw Hat's fears slowly faded as they saw the sight. That's so wonderful, Usopp said, rubbing his eyes. Looks like we've spoiled the future a little more, so sorry about that, Luffy, future Nami said. No problem. It's worth it for something like this, past Luffy said, grinning. And he's a musician. Oh, now I really want to know alright, how long do I have to wait before we meet Brook? Luffy asked. Figuring that the musician would make him break that rule, future Usopp chuckled. The 9th island in the Grand Line. You'll know you're getting close when you find a barrel in the ocean that's supposed to be an offering, but shoots off a firework when you open it. Just be careful. I won't say much, but you'll have a hell of a fight on your hands on that island, future Luffy said. Got it? Now, no more questions about the future, everyone. Oh, come on, Luffy, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Can't we at least have one question for our future selves? Usopp asked. Luffy pouted, but then he seemed to realize something. Alright. One question each, that's it. The past and future crew faced each other. Zoro spoke first. What happened to your eye? Future Zoro chuckled. Figured you'd ask about that. Let's just say it was a lot more work than we thought training to become the greatest swordsman in the world. I found another teacher during our journey when we all had to train to take on the second half of the Grand Line. I just wish I could see your face when you find out who he is. He lives at a place called Kurigana Island if you want to look it up. Younger Zoro suppressed his curiosity and nodded. Did you ever find the clear fruit? Sanji asked. His future self stiffened. No, but I found the bastard who did eat it around the time we met Brook, and the way he used it made me glad I didn't find it. You're fine as you are now and you get something that just works just as well later on. Younger Sanji blinked slowly and then nodded. How did you manage to keep up with the rest of the monsters in the crew? Nami asked. Her older self produced a golden baton from her cloak and showed it to her, squeezing one end of it and causing it to grow into a staff. This is the Klima tact. Usopp came up with the idea first. Using the weather as a weapon. The first version was just a glorified party toy, but it could generate mirages and miniature thunderclouds, complete with lightning strikes. The way it is now, it could annihilate a whole island if I wanted it to. And I'm really looking forward to using it on Arlong when we go back to save Belmere. Nami's smile was positively feral as her future self said that. Wish I could be there to see that. Usopp had a thoughtful look on his face as he considered the idea of the Klima tact, the blueprints already forming in his mind. He shook himself out of it, however, when he considered what to ask his future self. I don't recommend asking what Nami did, my preferred style now isn't something you'll be able to access for a while, future Usopp said. Usopp shrugged and thought it over. Oh, I've got it. What was my first bounty? The same as Luffy's, 30 million. But you can make it higher if you start training more seriously now, future Usopp said smugly. Zoro and Sanji looked as though they wanted to ask about their own bounties, but the question Luffy asked next drove those thoughts miles away from their minds. Did you save Sabo? The past crew looked at Luffy. Who's Sabo? He was my older brother, but some stupid nobles killed him when I was a kid, Luffy spat. The world nobles, easily the most evil people in the entire world government, future Usopp said, disgust clear in his voice. But the answer is no, Luffy. I didn't save Sabo because he didn't need saving. He survived, future Luffy said. Young Luffy's eyes widened. What? Members of the Revolutionary Army? I'm saying it this time, Robin. Luffy snapped. Robin and several others chuckled as future Luffy turned back with a huff. The head of the Revolutionary Army, Dragon, was visiting the island at the time, and he adopted him. He's the second in command of the whole army now, or will be in 2 years. I can't remember when he got the title. But he lost his memories from that explosion, which is why he hasn't shown himself to you yet. The Revolutionary Army? Would it even be safe to try to get back into contact with him, then? Past Sanji asked. For some reason, most of the future crew chuckled. Oh, trust me, you guys have nothing to fear from Dragon or anyone loyal to him, future Luffy said. As Luffy's one-track mind ignored the part about the Revolutionary Army, only thinking about how Sabo was alive. One more thought invaded his mind, however. Wait a minute. If Sabo's alive, then who did you decide to save? The future crew's laughter died immediately, and they stiffened in unison, exchanging looks. An uncomfortable silence fell before future Luffy finally sighed. Ace. A pirate named Blackbeard defeated him and turned him over to the world government to become a warlord. He was executed. Luffy felt his blood run cold at the thought, but that lasted for less than a second. What can I do to keep that from happening this time? Luffy demanded. Future Luffy thought for a minute and then looked behind him. How much time have we got left? About half an hour, I think, Robin said. Future Luffy removed his hood, and the grin he gave was just a little too feral for the past crew's comfort. Alright, everyone. Time for a crash course in Haki and 6 powers training. It was a very sore, bruised, and exhausted crew that faced their future selves as light began to envelop them. All of them stood on the deck of the Going Merry, Mr. 9 and Vivi next to them. Usopp had next to him a thick packet of notes on shipwright skills that would be expected to last him until they met Frankie. All 5 of the past crew, however, listened closely to the future captain as he shone. Today, you've seen proof with your own eyes that you can reach your dreams. We won't be coming back to this time again, so make sure that you can see us again yourselves one day when you look in the mirror, future Zoro said. Luffy, make sure to keep up the training and remember what I said. If you're good enough when you get to Jaya, you can stop Blackbeard before he starts. But otherwise, train 10 times harder from then on. And everyone, this is an order from your captain. Never give up on your dreams, no matter what comes at you. Future Luffy commanded. Right. The 5 past Straw Hat said. The light intensified around the cloaked group for a second and then winked out, taking them with it. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Patient One for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.